Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our News Digest program for today. We're also going to be speaking entirely in English, unless I try to sneak a word or two of Spanish in there to try to impress you. But no, we're supposed to stick totally to English here. And, of course, you may have heard of this phenomenon going on the internet about fake news, which has been used to influence elections and things like that. I don't know what extent fake news has here in Taiwan, but evidently there's some kind of software coming out that can help you find out if the news story you're reading is true or false.
So, I don't know if they have fake news in Taiwan. Oh, probably. I think every place has fake news at this point. And there are even some websites that are supposed to check stories, and they've been found to be fake as well. So be careful, guys. Maybe check a couple of different places. That's what I like to do, just to make sure a story's true.
Or maybe you should go to The Onion and just read their news, because all their stories are fake.
And it's funny, too.
Although somebody might try to sneak in a true news story on The Onion, so you never know what's going to happen there. But yes, who can you trust for your news?
I don't know.
Hopefully a software program is going to help out with that. We've also got some advice later on in the article that might help you tell the difference between what is true and what is fake. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now. These days, it seems fake news is everywhere on the internet. Stories range from protesters being paid by politicians to panic-inducing news coverage that makes people fear for their safety. With the internet providing a platform for mass sharing, fake news has spread like wildfire. Reports from media groups and U.S. intelligence agencies show that fake news stories spread faster than legitimate ones, and that people react to them more strongly than real news stories. As it turns out, humans are not always good at telling the difference between the two, and fake news can be very effective at eroding our trust in one another. How then do we stop the flow of fake news? Research teams worldwide are using one helpful tool: automatic lie detection programs. By using algorithms to pinpoint false facts and claims, these programs speed up the process of identifying and stamping out fake information. One example of how fake news is recognizable is by writing style. Fake news articles tend to be shorter, use fewer quotes and technical words, and express things in more absolute terms. Another important factor is looking at the way a news story spreads. Real news tends to be sourced directly from reputable sites, while fake news spreads through people reposting from one another. The fact-checking software can detect these trends and act on them by sending them to a human fact-checker for final confirmation. Although these tools are sure to be helpful in the fight against fake news, it's every bit as important for the average internet user to turn a more critical eye on what they're reading. With the combination of technology and responsible sharing, we'll hopefully see less fake news infiltrating our lives on the internet. Okay, everybody, it's time for us to discuss the contents of today's lesson in our all-English lecture. So the title here is Fighting Fake News with Fact-Checking Software. We don't like fake news unless they're doing it on purpose for humor, The Onion does. Some of their stuff is actually quite humorous.
Funny.
But unfortunately, a lot of fake news is trying to influence the way we think about the world.
Yep.
It's often very common during elections, like the Russians planting fake news stories in the United States to influence the election. Certain people, certain countries might try to influence the elections of other countries or their political events by posting fake news on the internet.
Yeah, because it affects your feelings about an issue. If you read what you think are facts about something, it can change how you feel about an issue. So I'm extra careful these days because even legitimate news sources had to apologize for printing things that weren't true. So be careful, guys. Check with a couple of different sources is probably the best thing to do. We're going to be talking, though, about this fact checking software, which is interesting. I don't know if I trust software any more than I do real websites. So these days, it seems that fake news is everywhere on the internet because just about anybody can publish. You know, if you have a Facebook account, you can publish news. Or you can put something on Twitter and say, you know, this is a real news story. So be careful about what you're reading. Stories range from protesters, people who are upset about something and they want to protest or, you know, let the government know, particularly the government or some other group that they're opposing, that they're unhappy. Those are protesters. A lot of them are paid. So they're paid money, meaning they don't have those genuine feelings necessarily. They're being paid by politicians to make, I don't know, your country kind of panic about something. Panic-inducing is the adjective form we're going to use here. Panic is when people are really nervous, upset about something, and they can't think clearly and calmly. There's a lot of panic sometimes when there's a fire and you want to get out of a building. There's panic. People end up getting hurt that way because people don't just take their time and line up and get out of a building that way. If you induce something, you create it. So they succeed in getting people to feel a lot of panic. So panic-inducing means someone has been successful in getting other people to feel that panic. So this is happening, and this is panic-inducing news coverage. I wanted to mention this word induce is often used to talk about women who are pregnant and about to have a baby. Sometimes that baby just doesn't want to be born, and sometimes the doctor will give you some sort of chemical that will start those contractions, and then the baby finally is born. That's also inducing labor, we'll say.
Right, to try to make something happen, basically. So, of course, sometimes when people call you on the phone and they want a favor from you and you say no, well, then what they'll do is they'll think of different strategies to induce you into saying yes. You said no at first, but they'll try to persuade you to change your mind. They just won't give up. They won't take no for an answer. But in this particular case, politicians want to bring about panic, and they have this news coverage. That just refers to how a news story is reported in the media, whether it's on TV, radio, the internet, newspapers, or whatever. So they try to have this news coverage induce panic in people. And of course, people will fear for their safety. They will be kind of scared that, hey, maybe somebody's going to come and cut my throat or something like that.
Oh, don't you remember, who was it? Orson Welles did a radio program a long time ago. And it was just a drama. He was pretending that the world was being invaded by aliens. But so many people were convinced it wasn't a drama or a radio show. They thought it was news. And a lot of people were hurt because of it. So it is possible to get people to really panic over things. You need to be careful. So with the internet providing a platform for mass sharing, I mean, here we are in Taiwan. We can share stuff with people who are in Africa or Europe, America. It's pretty easy to share things now because of the internet. Fake news has spread like wildfire. This is a phrase we use when something spreads very quickly. It could be something that's popular. Wow, that new flavor that they are selling at Starbucks, it's spread like wildfire. Or maybe someone has got the flu and they go to school, and that flu spreads like wildfire to his other classmates. We use it like that as well.
That's how fires spread. They just spread and they keep going. People in California know all about that. And reports from media groups and U.S. intelligence agencies show that fake news stories spread faster than legitimate ones, and that people react to them more strongly than real news stories. So we've got some U.S. intelligence agencies. Intelligence just has to do with spying, basically, collecting information about your enemies in the U.S. The two major ones are the FBI and the CIA, and they have shown they have some evidence that says, hey, these fake news stories actually spread faster than legitimate or real stories. And then people react more strongly to those fake news stories. They tend to be sensational. So if you read a fake news story, you get more emotionally upset. Gee, did he really do that?
That's wrong.
I'm going to do something. I'm not going to vote for him.
Yeah. So as it turns out is a phrase we use to talk about how something isn't the way we thought it would be. Here's what really happens. As it turns out, humans are not always good at telling the difference between the two. I know my sister would post things on Facebook or email me stories that I would think, yeah, I don't know if that's true. So I would do some research on the internet, and I almost always found out that it was a fake story. So if it's really kind of crazy or it makes your political enemy sound even worse than you think they are, it's probably not completely true. So as it turns out, you could say, I moved to Taiwan thinking that most of the food here was very spicy, but as it turns out, there are a lot of very mild dishes in Taiwan. So things turned out to be different than what I had first thought.
Right, so as it turns out here, humans are not always good at telling the difference between fake stories and real stories. And also it says here, fake news can be very effective at eroding our trust in one another. So here we've got the verb to erode, and that just means usually you have wind or water, and they kind of wear down the land. And of course, the noun for that is erosion. We've got to be careful because our rivers might erode the streams or something and take away all the dirt and the nutrients and things like that. Erosion, again, is the noun. So here, in this particular sense, we're not talking about the land or rocks or anything like that. We're talking about our trust in other people. So if we have these fake news stories out there, some people believe them, some people don't, well, then we will trust each other less and less. It will erode our trust. It will wear away or wear down our trust in each other. And we'll be suspicious of other people all the time.
Yeah, gradually destroy something. What is it? Yelio has that beautiful rock that's called, Queen's Head?
That's right.
Yeah, the wind and the rain. These things have all eroded that big rock, so it's in danger of falling someday. I hope not.
They think it will someday, but the question is when.
Don't touch it. So, but here, of course, we're eroding something that is not tangible. Tangible means something you can actually touch. So you don't want to erode your friendship or your trust in other people by not always being honest. So how then do we stop the flow of fake news? I'm not sure that we can. But here we have an idea. Research teams worldwide are using one helpful tool, automatic lie detection programs. It's still software or a machine. I don't know how much we can trust them completely. Not everything works the way we wish it would, but these are supposed to be able to detect or figure out or determine whether something's the truth or something's false or a lie. These are automatic lie detection programs.
Automatic, right. Lie detection. Of course, you probably heard of a lie detector, which is also called a polygraph. Sometimes police use on criminals to find out some information from them. I don't believe they're accepted in courts of law.
They're not, because they're not dependable the way they should be. People can beat them. We always say, he beat the lie detector test, or he beat the polygraph test, which is what the machine's called, a polygraph.
I'm kind of suspecting the same thing here.
Totally.
People who spread fake news will figure out ways to get past these lie detection programs. But we'll continue talking about it in just a couple of seconds. Let's take a break now, but please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, our break is over. Let's get back down to our story here. And we just left off. How do we stop the flow of fake news? How do we stop these fake news stories from getting on the internet? Well, we mentioned a helpful tool that possibly may do it. automatic lie detection programs or software. And by using algorithms to pinpoint false facts and claims, these programs speed up the process of identifying and stamping out fake information. So, of course, if you're talking about different computer programs or software, we often have these algorithms, which is a kind of a mathematical term. It's basically a set of rules that are used to make a program work the way it's supposed to work. And so we've got different algorithms that can detect certain things in these stories. And what they're supposed to do, these special programs, they're supposed to pinpoint false facts and claims. So here we've got the verb to pinpoint. That just means to find the exact location of something and point it out. Just like the point of a pin, it's very small, it's very precise. So if you pinpoint something, you find the exact point or the exact location of something.
Yeah, so it's very, very precise, absolutely precise, exact, as Tom said. So, of course, these algorithms are only as good as the people who are programming them. These are computer programmers who put together these algorithms, and they're the ones who decide what's false and what's true. And so it's all very dependent on people and how good they are at these algorithms. We know from Facebook that they use algorithms to send us particular ads that they think we'll be interested in based on what we look at online. They use a lot of algorithms. That's kind of the big thing these days. So these programs, the software, will speed up the process of identifying and stamping out fake information. If you stamp something out, you get rid of it. I always think of a fire when I see this verb phrase to stamp out, because I picture it's a small fire. If you use your boots, you can jump on the fire and kind of stamp it out so it's gone. Stamp out, you can stamp out lots of things. Maybe you have experience being in school and your teachers want you to stamp out drugs or stamp out smoking, where you're trying to get rid of that certain activity or action within the school to stamp out something. I don't see that so much these days, but yeah, we still use it to get rid of something. You want to stamp it out.
You might hear politicians saying that, hey, if you elect me, I'm going to stamp out crime, or I'm going to stamp out unemployment or something
Good
like
luck,
that.
yeah.
So in any case here, of course, these programs want to stamp out that fake information. One example of how fake news is recognizable is by writing style. So yes, how do you tell if a news story on the internet is true or false? Well, here's one example. Is how to recognize it. This example here is how recognizable it is in terms of its writing style. How is it written? And it's recognizable. That means you can tell that's what it is. Recognizable, of course, is from the verb to recognize. Gee, I didn't say hi to you in the market yesterday because I didn't recognize you. You were wearing a hat and you had a surgical mask on and I couldn't tell who you were.
My hair was different for sure, yeah.
But sorry, I didn't mean to be snobby or something, but I just didn't recognize you, or you were not recognizable. So here, fake news can be recognizable by its writing style, how it's written, like subject, verb, object, choice of words, things like that.
So these fake news articles or stories tend to be shorter. They use fewer quotes. Quotes are specific words somebody actually said. And usually we have quotes in news stories because this is a person who should have personal knowledge about something. They might be an eyewitness to a crime. So you want to quote them so that you're not just making up things. So these fake news stories usually have fewer quotes. There aren't as many quotes from people. And technical words, they don't use a lot of technical words. Maybe things are written in a very casual, more easily acceptable way. They express things in more absolute terms. They probably tell you whether something's good or bad. They don't just tell you the facts, they give you their opinion as well. Another important factor or part of this is the way a news story spreads. Of course, if it's one of those really crazy stories, it spreads very quickly, or, as we taught you, it spreads like wildfire. So people online, either in WhatsApp, Line, Twitter, Facebook, they'll forward this story onto their friends or the people in their groups because they just are so upset about it, or they think this is great. I want my friends to know. So usually when it's fake news, it actually gets spread faster.
Right. So look for the source, where it's coming from.
Yeah.
You know, you probably got some news sources here in Taiwan like oh, gee, I can't speak Chinese, can I? Well, some of the local newspapers and some of the TV stations have been around for a while, so their news stories are probably reliable. But if it's from a source you don't recognize, there's a very good chance that it is fake. And, of course, like I said, I couldn't say anything in Chinese here, but you know what I'm talking about. Some of the newspapers here are reputable sites. Reputable means they have a good reputation. And, of course, reposts that you see on Facebook or something are probably going to be fake, or at least could very well be fake. And the fact-checking software that we're talking about here can detect these trends and act on them by sending them to a human fact-checker for final confirmation. So, yes, the software looks for the different facts and looks for the writing style and looks for technical words and stuff like that. And if this software determines that this particular news story is fake, then it can act on those news stories. It can recognize them and point them out and let everybody know, hey, this story is fake. Don't read this. It's wrong. It's totally false. But if they're still not sure, well, then they can have an actual human look at the story and check the facts. Did this guy really say this? Did this really happen? Etc., etc.
I think it's interesting, at least on Twitter, I know that some people who are supposedly fact-checking are actually fact-checked by other people. And there are a lot of people online that will come back and go, no, that's not fake news. This is real. So it depends on who's looking at these things. I know Facebook is doing this now. They have algorithms, and then they send it to human fact-checkers for final confirmation. Depends on how that human being feels about the news story as well. So be careful with this stuff. To confirm something is to say, yes, indeed, this is the case. For example, if I make an appointment to go and see the dentist, I might want to reconfirm or confirm my appointment later just to make sure that I have the right time and date. So confirmation, you might want to always check for final confirmation. Don't assume. You need to get a confirmation from someone to make sure things are what you think should be happening, or if this piece of fake news is true or not. So although these tools are sure to be helpful in the fight against fake news, it's every bit as important for the average internet user to turn a more critical eye on what they're reading. I'm a big social platform guy. I mean, I'm always on Twitter looking at news that way. And there have been a lot of stories recently that they look like they're true, but then I do some extra research and I find out, yeah, that's not true. So be careful with what you're believing, and don't always trust software or these human fact checkers either.
Yeah, we've got a phrase here, to turn an eye on something. We're modifying it here to turn a more critical eye on something. Just look at something with suspicion.
Yeah.
Critical here means you're analyzing it. You're skeptical about it. You're not sure if it's true, so you're not really going to believe everything it says. So yes, indeed, be suspicious of what you're reading. And with the combination of technology and responsible sharing, we'll hopefully see less fake news infiltrating our lives on the internet. Okay, so yes, with this combination, okay, you can't totally trust the technology, so you've got to rely on yourself, but then you, of course, need to use software as well. So we're using this combination of technology and turning a critical eye on what you're reading, and hopefully less of that fake news will infiltrate or come into the internet, and we'll be able to tell what is true and what is false.
Now, Tom said or mentioned that we actually use this phrase a little bit more, the turn something eye. We often use this particular phrase to turn a blind eye to something. If you turn a blind eye to something, it means you purposely ignore something you know that's happening because you just don't really want to face it or deal with it. Maybe you have a husband who's cheating on you, but wow, you just don't want to deal with it. So you kind of just ignore it. And by ignoring it, you could use that phrase, she's turning a blind eye to her husband's unfaithfulness or her husband's cheating because she just doesn't want to face it or confront it. We'll often use that instead of turning a critical eye. But yeah, definitely turn a more critical eye on what you're reading, what people are saying is true. Unfortunately, we can't even trust our news sources like we used to, I would say even 10 years ago, because we're getting a lot of opinion these days. So be careful to see if you can get the facts.
Yep, get those facts and turn a critical eye on something. I did want to mention that it seems like fake news stories come out more often just before elections, okay? Because somebody out there is trying to influence elections. Other foreign powers might be trying to influence your election.
Or other parties that...
right.
Yeah.
So they might want to be supporting a particular political party over another one. So you never really know what you believe.
Yeah.
And then also there's the fact that sometimes people actually make things up before an election because they know they'll probably be able to get away with it. The election will be over by the time other people figure out that it was a fake news story.
True.
I believe things like that here in Taiwan do happen as they do in the United States. So my goodness, democracy seems under threat with all of these, dictatorships getting on the internet and sending this stuff around. North Korea comes to mind.
Yeah, just be careful with what you're reading. Make sure you're getting the facts and then study things yourself. Make your own decisions. It's probably a good way to go. I also check in with people I trust. I've found some people on both sides of an issue that I actually think are more honest than some others. And I'll read what they have to say first. But yeah, I think you have to find people and news sources that you really feel like are trustworthy. It's going to be an interesting world, though. I think it's just going to get worse and worse. And nowadays, you can completely change videos and photos to make them look so real that even agencies like, the CIA or the FBI that we have in America, they really can't tell some of these things if they're fake or not. We used to be able to tell if this technology that would supposedly prove things that were true, we used to be able to say, no, that's fake. But nowadays, not so easy because computers are just really good now.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how you never really heard about this before in the days of newspapers, before the internet became so common. We relied on newspapers for information, and sometimes the newspapers got it wrong, but never to the extent of fake news nowadays. It seems like you can't trust anybody on the internet, but I suppose those newspapers that are still around are still more or less trustworthy. And there you go. So yes, be critical about what you read on the internet and go to reputable websites, and hopefully you'll be able to discern the truth from falsehoods. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation, and it brings us to the end of our whole lesson for today. So yes, indeed, hopefully all of you can figure out what fake news is and what real news is. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.